So Dr. Lee, we've been just chatting offline about this, but can you flesh out some of these terms for us? What is the difference between first generation and immigrant youth? How do you define these? Is this standard across the board? Is there an understanding of what these terms mean in academic circles? How does this work?
I don't know because it's really confusing.
Yeah.
And I say that I'm teasing a little bit, but how these terms are defined is critical. And what's confusing is that in some literature, you will find that first generation means the first generation to step foot in the United States, right? For some folks, it's actually the first generation that's born in the United States. So the parents are the immigrants and the children that are born are served first gen. For some folks, they would think, so I explained, I came with my parents when I was 10 years old. So some will say that we're all first gens together because we came in, right? But then they're my parents, so they're an older generation. Anyway, like I said, it's really confusing.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to ask the person you're working with how they define the terms. Better yet, how do they identify? What identity speaks to them more? For me, I identify more as an immigrant youth, someone who came as an immigrant. I identify much more with that phrase, with that label than first generation, because I came with my parents. So I never really felt that, never really spoke to me, that label. So, but immigrant and immigrant youth really, for me, captures my experience as not only a young person, but as a young adult, and even later as an adult. And again, immigration history matters, right? So it's more important to think about pausing and asking the person you're working with, how do they define and how do they identify before you continue on making some assumptions. I think that's much more important. Understanding someone's story, it's critical.
It all goes back to their story, their sense of how they would identify themselves, and accompany them and let them make those decisions and determinations instead of you imposing that on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.